everybody. It is a Sunday morning. I am in my robe, and please forgive me. My hair is a little messier than usual. I don't typically do my hair because I don't see the need in it, but it's a little extra messy today, and I am working on just being more present and authentic in these videos. I'm also here with my kitty, Turtle, who's my little YouTube buddy for the day. And I want to talk about ways that people on the spectrum deal with sensory processing disorder. I don't think it's a secret that many of us struggle with SPD, which is a fancy way of saying that our bodies have a hard time processing sensory information in real time. So we can become more easily overwhelmed by sounds, lights, and textures, among other things. Hi, Turtle. Hi, sweet girl. So there are two compensatory strategies that people on the spectrum have developed to deal with sensory overwhelm. There's more than two in reality, but I want to talk about two today. One is sensory avoidance, and the other is sensory seeking. You're probably more familiar with sensory avoidance. So if you've ever worked with a child who covers their ears when they hear loud noises, or covers their eyes in environments where there are lots of light, or avoids large crowds, that kind of thing, you're working with a child who is sensory avoidant. So that means the way they deal with overwhelming sensory information is to avoid that information by limiting their senses. And probably a more unfamiliar way to the general public that people on the spectrum compensate for sensory processing disorder is by sensory seeking. So sensory seeking is when somebody seeks out really intense or bold sensations to override the onslaught of sensory information that is not able to be processed in real time. So if you've ever worked with a child who is very outgoing, who likes to run and move and jump and speak or yell really, really loudly over and over again, or in adults, it could look like somebody who loves to travel and seeks out very intense sensory environments like roller coasters. Will ride roller coasters again and again. You've probably met a sensory seeker. And it is possible to be both at different times. I am an example of that. When I was younger, I was a sensory seeker. I sought out really bold, strong sensations. That's why I did really well working with children for a long time. I could just dump out buckets of paint, put on a bathing suit, and just roll around in it outside for hours. I loved dancing, running, jumping, screaming with young children. I sought out that information as a way to create a predictable sensory experience for myself. The problem with that is that you can get burnt out pretty quickly. It's not that sustainable. And that's exactly what happened for me. I got burnt out for a lot of reasons, including that masking autistic traits when you're doing emotional work with other people is very draining. So that was part of it. But also part of it was just, when you're seeking out such intense sensory situations like that all of the time to try to regulate your sensory experience, it can be very exhausting and very draining. So after COVID, when I was not working in person with families for a while, and I moved to the country, it's very quiet, I started noticing my sensory overwhelm in a different way, becoming more conscious of it. And I actually became more sensory avoidant. So now it feels harder for me to go into the grocery store. Before I would maybe listen to really loud music and go in. But now I just don't want to go in at all. I like quiet, or I use noise canceling headphones. Um, it's hard for me to go into an environment where there's live music, for instance. Whereas before I used to, I could blast the music as loud as it got when I was dancing with children for like 2 hours. So it is possible to shift. But these are two ways that people on the spectrum deal with sensory overwhelm. People who seek out autism assessment and are sensory seekers are often overlooked. They're usually diagnosed as having a different disorder. I don't like the label disorder for autism, but that's what it states in the DSM. Because there's really a lack of understanding about the different ways that people on the spectrum deal with sensory overwhelm. And as we learn more, it becomes clearer and clearer that sensory seekers are able to mask a little bit better in the world because they tend to be more gregarious, outgoing. They seek out interactions with other people and sensory experiences in a different way than those of us who are more sensory avoidant. But that means they're also easily missed and they don't get as much support. So if you are someone who is on the spectrum or loves someone on the spectrum or works with people on the spectrum, it's important to know and look for these very different ways of dealing with sensory overwhelm so that you can support the people around you better.